Okay, so let's open up Photoshop, download the next file, which is Bootcamp Sample 3, and then open it up in Photoshop. You'll see it's a pretty damaged image. I wanted to talk a little bit about your workspace and how you can customize that so that it feels better to work with. Go up to File and over to Edit, and then go down to Preferences, and then go over to Interface. That's going to open up a panel that will give you an option to change the backgrounds, as you can see. Take your time, click on all of them, and see what's the most comfortable for you. When you have figured out what color you like best, click OK, and then we'll start. We're going to talk a little bit about resolution and image size before we get into talking about how to fix this image. You have to be aware when you're working on an image what you're working on the image for, if it's for web or if it's for print. And let's take a look at the image size and take a look at you see the width and the height and the pixel size, and most important is the resolution. If you're going to be doing print publication, you want a minimum of 300 dpi. Or 300 pixels. Okay? If you are doing a web work, it can be 72. So keep that in mind. The other thing you want to consider is whether you're using RGB color or CMYK color. RGB color is for web work, and CMYK color is one of the options for print. Okay, so I just changed my palette to CMYK. Now, the first thing we're going to do is learn how to crop our image. Take a look at these little marks on all four sides. Those are grab marks for you, little grab tools. So as you can see, I'm grabbing them, and I am deciding what I'm going to crop with my image. I'm cropping a little bit of the arm off. Right now that's all I'm going to do at the moment, but I'd like to straighten it. It's kind of off center. So as you can see, the little arrows over in the corner when you bring your cursor up there give you the ability to straighten your image, and when you do that, a grid pops up so that you have an easy way to align your image. So now that that's straightened, I'm going to crop it a little bit more. And you can do it as much or as little as you like. I'd like you to keep the basic image up because we are going to do lots of little things on this image. But when you're on your own, you can play around with this image. Okay, when you're done with your crop, just hit the return key. Okay, another way that you can straighten your image is to select the crop tool, and then you use the little level tool. Just by drawing a line, that is how your image is going to be arranged. It's going to follow the line that you've drawn and make it parallel to that. Okay, so let's check our document dimensions, and you just go down to the bottom and you open up the drop down box. It really comes up, and you pick dimensions, and it will show dimensions. Now my dimensions are pica, and I want to change that. I want to change it to I think I'm going to change it to inches. So I'm going to go to my preferences and go to my general palette, and I'm going to make some changes on how I read my image size. So I'm changing it to inches and pixels. And I'm doing each section. When I'm done, I'm going to click OK, And then if you go back down to see your document size, you'll see that it has changed it to inches. And it also is telling me the DPI. Let's take a look at the image itself. It's in pretty bad shape. I want you to go over to your curves, click the curves in the adjustment panel and add a curves adjustment layer. And then look on your image and pick the lightest part of the image. You want to select what is going to be considered the white point. The white point is the color that Photoshop defines as pure white. And it's going to set your other colors according to that pure white setting. Okay, now let's click Levels in the Adjustments panel, and we're going to add a level layer. Okay, so when you take a look at this, you're going to see on the left-hand side is the black point, on the right-hand side is the white point, and in the middle is the middle point, obviously the middle gray point. So drag the black point up and down and see what you'd like it to look like. I'm going to make it a little darker, and then with my midpoints I'm going to bump it up a little bit. Alright, and when you're done with setting those, you want to flatten the layer. So let's flatten that layer. You go over to Layers and Flatten Image, and you'll see that all of those layers are now one layer. So let's take a closer look at this. See that big tear down the center? Let's fix that. We're going to use the Spot Healing Tool brush. And we're going to readjust our size for the brush. We want to have it at 100% for hardness. And then we're going to change this to 25. And we want to make sure it says Content Aware. That's what we want selected. Alright, now we go back to our image, and where the rip is, just trace that line and you'll see a nice big black line. Keep going all the way through. You'll see it heals when you lift up your mouse. And then you can go back over little areas that maybe need some tweaking. Just follow the crack all the way through. Well, that's really the hardest part. Just keep working all the way through. Take your time, you don't need to rush. You can increase your zoom if it's easier for you. And don't go too crazy. Just get the big flaws out. So there are a couple of wrinkles here, a couple of tears. Some wrinkles down there and a tear that I want to take care of. Just go over the big stuff. I'm just looking through the image and just tweaking little bits. Okay, so it looks like that is going to be it for the most part. Okay, so now let's take a look at the patch tool. This is a great little tool if you want to remove things from your image. You want to check the content aware again. And leaving your structure at 4 is pretty standard. It can go up to 7. It's from 1 to 7, and 4 is a pretty good standard to stick with. What you want to do is you just draw around the image that you want to replace and make sure you connect it, and then you drag it over to a space that has the same coloring and it will replace it. It's a pretty cool feature. So now that you see it at 100%, it's pretty, it does a pretty good job. Let's take a look at the clone stamp tool. This tool is a little tricky to use, but it's very helpful. Let's change our size to 60 points, or 60 pixels rather, and 30 for hardness. We want to go over and we want to make sure that aligned is checked. And now we're going to take a look at some areas that maybe are not quite right. Like right here, it looks like the body got eaten up a little bit. So you take your stamp tool and then you press Alt to select the area that you want to clone, and then you move it to what you want it to replace. So if you have a Windows, you're going to select Alt and then click the area you want to copy, and then you move it over to the area you want to replace. If you're working with a Mac, you want to do Option click. So now let's take a look at some filters. We're going to go to Noise and Dust and Scratches. And you'll see how it changed in the background. You can see that it has changed some of the pixels. And then we're going to go back up to your filters, and we're going to select Sharpen and Smart Sharpen. We're going to keep it on lens blur, and then we're going to change the amount slider to 60 and the radius to 1.5. And now if you take a look at the image, you'll see that it has made a dramatic difference in the texture. So I am going to actually change my image to RGB because we are going to play around with a feature that you have to be in RGB in order to use, and that is your black and white feature. So we're going to darken the image. And then we're going to pump up the maximum black. You can see it changing. Now you can also tint your image. If you click on the color selection, you can choose whatever color you like to tint your image, and it will tint the complete image for you. And I'm just going to select a couple colors so you can kind of see how it changes the image. Play around with that. It's kind of fun. Now you can also change the tint just by typing in numbers in your RGB. So red, let's change it to 227. Your green, let's change it to 209. And your blue, let's change that to 196. So thank you so much. We're going to end our class right here, and then tomorrow we will do more. But today, play around with what you've learned. We've actually learned quite a lot today, and it kind of opens up so many options for you. So play around with that. Okay, and I'll see you tomorrow.